Welcome to the Academy of Esports podcast. I'm your host, James O'Hagan. I'm here today with Bubba Gaeddert. He's with the Varsity Esports Foundation out in Kansas City, Missouri. Bubba, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you, James. I am here to learn.
Learn? Well, I'm here to interview you. I'm here to learn from you, my friend.
Well, I've got nothing to learn. I've got nothing to teach. I learn a lot from you. So I'll say a few things, but really I'll be learning from you.
Well, Bubba, one of the things that I admire about you is that you're out there and you're just like, you know what? I really believe in esports. I really believe it's important. And you're just out there just getting it done. You've devoted full time to promoting esports and education. You've formed the Varsity Esports Foundation. That's kind of a big deal, especially when, we've got groups like NAIA and HSEL and Playversus, but their focuses are more around forming leagues, doing some professional development, I guess you could say, for teachers. But your foundation is kind of taking things from a different angle and a different approach. Can you first of all tell us, how did you get to the point of where you jumped into the Varsity Esports Foundation, and then where was it born out of? Where was the idea? What was the impetus?
Yeah. So really, 3 years into this esports, this thing we call esports, I'm young at it, only 3 years in, even though there's people who've been doing it for many, many years. And it really started for me in gaming when I was a kid growing up. My dad worked at Radio Shack, and I got to build computers and drive remote control cars and play tons of video games. But then 3 years ago, after I had been working for nonprofits and in the traditional sports field for about 20 years, I decided to, through my YMCA experience and my Chamber of Commerce experience and Parks and Rec, sports commissions always bringing in events to do stuff. I thought we really needed some sort of gaming event here in Kansas City, in the suburb I lived in. And so I partnered with a couple different people. Some of those were Ramsey Jamul at Midwest Esports in Wichita, and Abdul Yahaya in Kansas City, Local Legends Gaming. And then I met Mason Molyneux from High School Esports League, who's also here in Kansas City, and Michael Brooks from National Association of Collegiate Esports. So we've got a really big hotbed of esports folks here.
And NAIA is also in National Association of Collegiate Esports is in Kansas City too, right?
Yep. Yeah,
okay.
Actually, there's another Zoom call right now with our Kansas City Esports Coalition he's leading right now, and that we're very deep involved in esports in Kansas City. We know we're not Atlanta, like Atlanta likes to be the esports capital of the world.
Oh no, you're leaving out those Santa Monica folks.
Oh, everybody's got a claim to fame. We'll just put our head down and just keep doing Scholastic. I think we got, we're not in Racine having a lot of fun like you, but we're out here in Kansas City just trying to be Patrick Mahomes for the esports industry.
Well, Bubba, the thing I do appreciate about y'all out there is that I did grow up in Kansas City. I was there from 78 to 85. My dad worked for TWA Airlines up at the airport. So I lived right on the cusp of North Kansas City and Gladstone. So I know Kansas City really well.
I remember you talking about that. That's the roots here in the Midwest. It's the new Midwest, as they say.
Yeah.
So really 3 years ago, after I met all these people in the industry and realizing I'm a gamer, I'm a nerd, how do I support this with the love I have of hanging out with students and working with middle school and high school students? And I'm at church 8 days a week. My wife's a pastor. We're always doing stuff with kids at church. And
aren't you supposed to rest on the 8th day or something?
Yeah, I think that's it's in the Bible somewhere. Yeah.
Right.
But we really just love investing in supporting education, whatever that be. And we got together, a few of us got together here in the metro, and we're like, hey, we should really start this nonprofit, because look what's happening with scholarships, look what's needed to be done with grants and financial assistance for schools, for Title I schools. And so December of 18, after I had a kind of a successful event with the Sports Commission, about 800 people at a esports competition that was partnered with those folks here in Kansas City, we got this nonprofit going in 18 of December. And then last September, a couple of us got together. We're like, hey, we need somebody to run day to day. We need somebody who knows nonprofit and somebody who knows gaming and esports. And I'm like, well, I guess I could run it. And so after I left the sports commission, I came full time over here to the Varsity Esports Foundation, and really I wanted to take it from not just financial assistance for Title I schools, free reduced lunch, low income families, and support them through scholastic efforts with esport clubs or scholarships that we do through High School Esports League. We do that with eFuse, other opportunities out there. Black Salt is another opportunity. We do scholarships, a couple different donor advice funds, and it's like, we need to do more, and really dove into the soft skills and trying to be the connective tissue for esports. That whole, our pillars around education, awareness, support, and advocacy. I just wanted to expand those in digital citizenship, and to just expand those. And that's kind of where we are today. And it's been a really fun ride the past 6-8 months, however long I've been doing this.
Well, we did meet down at TCEA, and I had heard about you, and I had seen you popping up in my LinkedIn feed, and I know we had connected before. And I know, esports, see if you feel this way about it. Yeah, you were talking about, you alluded to about how, you've been doing this for 3 years, which, for people in education, 3 years is a long time. I've been doing this about 5 to 6 years, and I guess you call me an OG, but the 3 years is a good amount of time. I mean, we've got people stepping into the space right now who are, 6 months, and they're going out there and talking about, all the great things that they're doing, but the time that they've put in has been kind of limited. What has been your take, I guess, on the rush to fill the space right now? Because it feels like, again, before even the COVID outbreak and before all this, there were people kind of rushing in. Where are you seeing people come into the foundation? What are you seeing as their biggest need as they come to you looking for guidance or suggestions or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm real lucky. I get to have like 5 or 6 phone calls with just different people every day. Zoom call. I mean, this has been happening for really 8 months of just taking phone calls and learning about these pockets of really great things happening around, let's just say the United States for right now, outside of all the phone calls we have internationally, but like just these pockets of really great things happening across the country that people don't know enough about. So really for me, for our foundation, is gathering and collecting that info and then going out to talk about it. Whether it be, I just tagged you on your post to Lindsay Milgore. She's Gamer Doc. She does podcasts on her Twitch, and she's a doctor, but she's a gamer, and she's like a semi-pro hockey player. And
yes, I know about her. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I had once tweeted at her if she had ever considered playing rugby, and she said I was nuts or something to that effect.
Oh, really?
So,
she
yeah.
Seems like she could play.
She didn't seem interested in playing rugby.
She likes the ice.
Yeah.
But those kind of pockets, like even Mamba Academy with Kobe Bryant's foundation in LA, just been partnering with them over the past. I mean, we were partnering with them back in the fall, and then when Kobe passed away, we started this whole effort to do a scholarship fund for gaming, because they have a whole cognitive learning esports section in their arena that they have in LA that they're duplicating across the country. And then COVID-19 came out. But I guess to get to your question, all those conversations we've been having, yes, I've kind of pushed, and we've talked a little bit about this in our phone calls and one-on-ones, is that maybe early adoption could be over by the summer. Let's say we didn't have the COVID-19 outbreak. The early adoption for esports is about over. I mean, if you're not in, it's not bad that you're not in, but man, you're missing out on stuff. So I think that pushed a lot of people to rush in an industry that has no ceiling, really.
Right.
And that we get to shape it, because, I mean, you and I are talking about scholastic esports, the pipeline, the thing that's going to help be able to push students and parents and teachers in with career readiness, college readiness. I mean, that's really important. And I think the rush for what I like to say is big money and dumb money. I know we could talk about that. Big money and dumb money, rushing to put money into different organizations, events, leagues, especially events. Now, I say Coca-Cola brand type companies see the 50, 60,000 seat arena with 10 players on the stage and say, that's a great return on investment. But there's only like 4 of those events a year,
right,
across the world. And they're more, all the numbers in the Super Bowl and everything. But if you go and want to be a sponsor and you hear about it in your region or your community and you're like, hey, we're going to put a bunch of money and there's 400 people there, it's not the same return on investment. So people are rushing in that sense. But I think to talk about what's happened in the past month, I've had so many conversations. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, we're going to do an esports tournament. You know what? Hey, James, hey, we're going to do an esports tournament. It's going to be great. And, it's real easy, right?
No.
Well, let me get. So I spent a lot of time being an esport translator. I know you probably do as well.
Yeah.
Because you play rugby. I played rugby a little bit in college. I didn't know if you knew that.
Oh, yeah.
I played soccer in college mostly, but and all those guys. I think I tagged those guys, the Rugby Foundation.
Yes.
Phil and them.
Yeah, it's funny how the rugby people see a lot of commonalities with esports right now in a lot of ways. I mean, let's pause for just a second and talk about this, because I do talk about my rugby experience. But rugby, because it is not a traditional big Power 4 sport in the United States, it's not a popular one, but it's a good, solid club sport across the United States. You can usually find a club somewhere in a major city or suburb at least, and even in some rural areas. The culture is very much land of misfit toys. It is very much just guys and girls. I mean, I've played on mixed teams as well. That it's just, we don't find something else that kind of fits that competitive niche that we want. Bowling leagues don't work for us. Softball leagues don't work for us. Swimming's not our thing. And I see a lot of similarities and commonalities with our students, the scholar gamers that we have in Racine, where, again, the traditional athletics for most of them did not appeal to them. The extracurriculars didn't appeal to them. And rugby, it does a lot of the same kind of things. It scratches that competitive itch that they may have. And what I've also found too, just by putting our 5 teams together all in the same shared space, rugby clubs, while competitive against each other on the pitch, at the end of the matches, they all come together and they have a big party. And what I found with our esports teams is, we put all 5 schools together, and while they may compete against each other sometimes, at the end of it, they all come together and they're sharing what they did, how they did it. There's not this, okay, go off now and go home and, complain about the other team, whether you won or lost. So yeah, there's a lot of good commonality there.
I love being able to find that community. And I think that's what drew me to really push the effort here on esports. It is the belonging, the community, and just thinking about that translation of esports to sports, traditional sports. I mean, I'm an event nerd. I love running events. I'm happy now that I don't have to be in a role where I'm working 80 hours a week and running a Super Bowl every weekend at the Y, and 5,000 kids playing in a flag football tournament. I'm happy to not have to do that any longer. But I love diving deep into events, and when I think about those questions of people saying, "Hey, we want to right now run an esports tournament." Well, have you ever run an event before? Have you? I mean, for me, when people would call me at the Y, like, "Hey, how do you organize your?" I used to organize the Garmin Marathon. 5,000 people would run for 4 hours and be done, and that was a year and a half planning. And so they'd say, "Hey, I just want to organize a 5K for my Boys and Girls Club. It's super easy, right, for our Boy Scouts or whatever. And we could get like 300 people show up, and we'll make thousands of dollars." Like, no, it takes 6 months minimum of work and phone calls with police officers and the traffic and everything. There's a lot of work. So the conversations in the past few weeks about esport tournaments, having done those online myself when I first started 3 years ago, trying to build it through the Sports Commission here in Kansas City, was a 6-month learning process of rules and dealing with 11-year-olds who didn't know how to read rules on the Discord. Just an immense. So I Debbie Downered a lot of people that asked, like, "Hey, we want to do this. How do we do it?" But luckily, and maybe we'll talk about later with the partners we have, they actually have some really great opportunities coming up where you can be a part of this free league happening during the COVID-19 outbreak and not have to organize it on yourself.
Well, and before we get into that, because it's a good portion about what I want to talk about today, but you touched on something I think that a lot of people don't even realize when they're starting to get into these things, and that they see, oh, it's online. This goes back to even my role as director of digital and virtual learning when it comes to talking to people about online learning, which I'm glad to see everybody's learning isn't as easy as it sounds. There is a lot of work. There's got to be actually more social interaction that you do have to do offline than you do online just to keep kids engaged.
Yeah.
But what people I think are starting to realize or open their eyes up to, and this really goes back to the Riot Act letter, the open letter to Riot Games I wrote a few weeks ago that you signed as one of the primary signers, goes back to the developers have very specific rules about every game. For example, we're trying to run an event here in Racine called Tech Prize, and part of the tracks is with esports, and they wanted to run an Overwatch tournament. And they're talking about, they're throwing around prize money. They're throwing around, all these things. I'm like, well, have you looked at, their guidelines around running a tournament, depending on the size of the money, depending on, Blizzard has specific rules such as you can't run a tournament event at the same time Overwatch League would be broadcasting. Like, that makes so much sense. Like, they want to have their game being if you're streaming something out and you're running it as an official event and it's an Overwatch match and they're running Overwatch League at the same time, guess what? You're going to get dinged. A lot of people just don't realize those things. Every developer has different rules.
Well, and that's the power of the publisher. That's the power of the developer. It's fun to talk about, I love education teaching. I do teach at a university here in Kansas City. I'm just an adjunct professor, but I teach traditional sports, and I teach a lot of history of sports. One of the most fun subjects I always cover is James Naismith, and how when I was at a YMCA, he was a sports director just like me, and he created basketball in 1891, and it was 13
Massachusetts, right?
Yeah, near Boston, Massachusetts. Yep. And
Springfield, Massachusetts.
Springfield, that's correct. Yep.
Yes.
So Springfield, Massachusetts. Then a few years later, volleyball was created by another YMCA guy down the road from there, and that tie back to the why for me is fun. But really, the power and the publishers, I think, is big. And I'll talk about that in a second. But me teaching and talking about James Naismith's 13 rules on 2 pages and talking about how that was where it is at that time. And then now when I referee high school basketball, I got 4 books that I've got to know to referee. And when you think about comparing traditional, like NBA, let's say NBA 2 months ago, not NBA now, and maybe League of Legends or something. So you have NBA is the league, and they have the rules, and then TNT or TBS broadcast, right? So then you have League of Legends, who Riot is the game creator, not they're the James Naismith, and they are also the rules, and they are the NBA, but they're also the TNT. They're also producing the content or putting it out there. So they're really holding the power, and that's the, I think, to your Riot letter, getting through the noise of the publishers to help them see why you should expand the openness of your games for digital citizenship, for digital learning, for belonging, for diversity inclusion. I mean, I know it's one of the most toxic games out there to play League of Legends. I played a ton, but how do we move past that? I know you've done some podcasts about that, but there's a need to kind of, it's not like put the power in the hands of the people. That's great. I don't think it's going to happen because the publishers hold so much power, but I mean, it's like we are supporting them through the gameplay. So the reciprocation there of supporting the openness, I think, is important.
Well, and to speak kind of to your point too, the difference, of course, is with all this is that I don't think developers or publishers realize just how big of a subset high school esports is. That, when you look at the Riot community guidelines as they rewrote them, I think the first time they wrote them was in 2011. So this was a 9-year update. This needed to be done, obviously, because things had changed in 9 years. But where I think they are missing is, for example, they lumped us in with collegiate. They lumped in K-12 with collegiate. And really, collegiate's goals around esports are very different than the goals around K-12 esports. For the by and large, minus HSEL and Playverses, kids are playing these games part of nonprofit associations or intramurally. State associations are doing this. And I don't think publishers and developers really just don't understand the landscape of high school esports because, maybe they start to see, traditional athletics through a lens, even though they don't want to, but I think that they start to. But really what we're using this for is more, and I don't know if you are, but I know for my own school district, because again, we refer to them as scholar gamers. We don't call them esports athletes. We're using video games as a vehicle to get us into something so much more. And what's been really fascinating to me about this COVID-19 outbreak isn't just how people have kind of rushed into esports, but also the conversation that started, because I also oversee libraries in my school district. Conversations that started around copyright. And what's really interesting about copyright is because I have librarians who are wanting to read books to kids. And one of the things about fair use is, are you tying back what you're doing to a curricular value? So I could read a book online to a child as long as it has tied in curricular value. I look at Riot's guidelines and I go, that's nice. However, because the game is free, I'm using esports as an educational tool, not necessarily as a strictly competitive tool. I'm going to argue fair use. If you come at me and say I can't do an invitational or run a league, okay, but I still might run something and call it an educational experience. There's different ways that we can start to do this. And I think having high school people as part of the conversation with Riot, with Blizzard, with Epic, I think is going to be something that's going to be a major to do going forward here on out.
Yeah, I really like that. We can talk about this for a while, but was esports the right term for all this in 1999 when it was coined or whatever? Was that the right thing to put it under a sport when you're calling them scholar gamers, right?
Yep.
And I've heard other people refer to activity. A lot of people are saying I'm getting through to my administrator because it's an activity, not a sport. Or I'm not calling it esport. I'm calling it competitive gaming or organized play. And those kind of conversations we get to have with there's about 50 schools a week that our partners HSCL onboard every week that are the same questions. And they are all trying to find answers to be supportive. But I'd look back at here when I was in Kansas City in this suburb working with Chamber and Y and trying to rent sports fields and trying to rent basketball gyms for our leagues. And the athletic director, he really just wouldn't give me time of day. I was like, man, why am I paying so much for these scoreboards every single time? I've bought your scoreboards over and over, $20 an hour. I think it was like $10 to $15 an hour every game. And
just for a scoreboard?
Just for renting it. Yeah. And we spent like $100,000 every basketball season for like 40 gyms a week. We had a lot of kids and I thought, I really need like a discount here, something. And so that was so many years of that happening. And then last November, I went to the public school foundation breakfast and I walked over to him afterwards and I said, hey, how you doing? And he said, Bubba, you're doing esports now. Oh man, we got to get that in every school. I've got so many kids who don't have anything to do. Like they don't do band, they don't do sports, they don't do drama. Like there's so many kids I want to give belonging. And so I looked at him and I thought, who are you and where did you put the other guy? And will you come work for me and talk about esports? Because it was just funny. So we've had a lot of conversations. And this is a school district my kids go to. And so they have potential in middle school and high school to play, organized play. And it's happening. The numbers are 3,000 schools across the country, if not more around there, high schools wise, maybe 1,000 middle schools that are playing organized play. And that organized play on their own and then connecting on Discords and chats to play other schools or down the road is happening. But league structure will be out in the fall for that even heavier around the country. I know it's already out with NASIF, and I know Chris Aviles, who you know, there's a lot of that happening already for middle schools, but the high school scene, there's 36,000 high schools in the country. There's about 3,000 schools, high schools around the country who have esport clubs, or if not more. But still, that's only 10% of the 36,000 high schools in the country. So when we talk about no ceiling, there's a lot of opportunity for schools. And to go back to your point of scholarly gaming, like
Scholar gamer, yeah,
scholar gamer, like yes, like that is the focus. But has esports almost put a dampening? Okay, like we as a society perpetuate gamers go to the basement, eat your Doritos, drink your Red Bull. If we continue to do this, we are not going to have the growth in esports in the scholastic space, because that's how we perpetuate for so long. When you and I played traditional sports, high school, college, whatever it may be, nobody was going around saying silly rugby players, doing exercise.
No. They called us silly rugby players, but go on.
let me put it this way. What are you doing exercise and blah, blah, blah? Like football players, even band, don't get there's a platform there because we as society put athletes on the platform. I work for a Fellowship of Christian Athletes. We used to use the platform to promote religion and Jesus. So using that platform, it's there, right? So find the people and vet them that are sharing that mission, but society doesn't do this platform with gaming as much on a whole. There's us endemic to the industry who get it, but outside of that, it's stay in the basement, be a gamer, and we're not going to be okay with you doing this.
And I think with COVID, again, there's been all these professional athletes who have nothing to do, and it's been very interesting to see. You went back to the beginning of the conversation. You talked about how you've been doing this for 3 years, and there's professionals who kind of maybe look down on you, like, oh, I've been doing this for 10 or 15 years or whatever. But the high school scene is roughly brand new. I mean, we're talking 5-6 years. I mean, we're not talking very long. So to be, I guess, put down by professionals in one way, and what I'm worried about right now, I guess, is a couple of things. Number one, all these professionals are rushing into the space. Professional athletes are rushing into the space. Again, there's nothing else going on. So everybody's putting eyes on esports. There's dollars going in, but they're going in at the professional level. They're going in for halves to participate in this. While one of the big things I worry about is, number one, when all the traditional sports start up again, what are we left with? These professional athletes are like, oh, look, I played in the NBA 2K tournament and won. Okay, that's cool. Now you're going back to play your professional regular sports, and you're leaving us all sitting here going, okay, thanks for being part of this for 3 months or whatever. That was fun. But we're also, and this is, again, maybe some of the work you can talk about with Varsity Esports Foundation, because I get to ask this question a lot. What are we doing for those kids who are the have-nots? I've got an entire team of kids who don't have a console at home, don't have a PC at home, data plans. It's nice right now that phone companies are saying, hey, no data plan. We're going to let you have all the data you want. But at the same time, they got to pay the phone bill. And they can't necessarily pay the phone bill, and that's usually the first thing that gets shut off when bills are tight. How is the Varsity Esports Foundation working with kids, with families, with schools to help provide equipment to these kids who need it the most?
Well, this is the stuff we love to do. I think about your question, and I think about, yes, the top-down approach that we see of the putting money into professional. Colleges have a bit more credibility to get sponsors and donors in to support their esports arena or gaming center and their team and jerseys and whatnot. But then on the high school level, middle school level, it definitely is a GoFundMe type situation, or a fund my team, or a we're gonna sell, like the football team sells coupons to local restaurants, or the posters, or the banners for the athletic teams. So that top down approach is really what esports has been for a while. Luckily, I think all of us in the scholastic space working from the bottom up is really where the focus is. because the power is held in the principals, not at a high level with the national organizations for traditional sports or the state level. I mean, the state level sanctioning. I mean, I had the Oklahoma sanctioning, Oklahoma athletic activities director last December say, what game should we sanction? What game should we sanction for our state? I said, all of them. I mean, look. I said,
or one of them, depending on what they want.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. My comment to him was, do you just sanction hurdles in track and field?
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, you can't just sanction hurdles when there's kids, they want to do all different things. Or you can't just sanction flute in band. You know, you've got to have opportunities for kids who different things. You gotta have rugby and football, right? You gotta be able to appeal to different audiences or different skills, right?
Well, and even as when people ask me, what's the first thing that I do? What games do I buy, or what computers do I buy? I go, don't worry about that first. What are your strategic goals? What is, at your school level, what are you trying to do to move forward? What students are you trying to attract? Once you decide all that, the games will then sort them. You'll be able to, you'll see the games that are going to work to fit the needs of your kids. Yeah.
Survey the kids. What are they playing? And you may not need to buy any equipment because they all have Nintendo Switches and they can play Smash together.
Well, some do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So many have
Nintendo
Switches.
Yes.
Sorry, that was my sum and all, right?
Sure.
So in the sense of the Varsity Esports Foundation, what do we get to do? What are we allowed to do? What do we get to have fun doing? Well, we've talked a little bit about it, but the big focus for us is Title I, free and reduced, and low income schools and organizations. Now, if it's a middle school, high school, or a tech school, if they're wanting to have esport organized play, like, great. Here's the tools. We've got NAIA that can do stuff for you. You got HSCL. They've got organized play information. Like, here's how you start a club. They got stuff that you've put on your podcast. Like, how do you start a club? There's a lot of that out there. It's a lot of segmentation still. We're very segmented in the esports industry because we're either all doing we're all talking about esports, or we're all talking about what you can do, or here's how you stream, or here's how you set it up, and or like Paul Richards wrote a book, Esports EDU. It's a really good book, and maybe that teachers do like books. That's good. Yeah. But we're all segmented still. But then I look at the next level. Well, we've got curriculum. NAICF has really great curriculum you can put into actual classes that are already happening. They've got a fellowship they did for over a year with a bunch of teachers that you can be a part of. I look at our friends in Wichita who created the gaming concepts curriculum. It's 148 pages of curriculum. And what I like about it is you can get a lesson, you can get a curriculum book. Like, remember in school we had the book, but the teacher had the bigger one with the red ink.
Yep, they had the answers.
Right, they had the answers. It's curriculum and lesson plan. I know for me, teaching, when I created my curriculum for my sports classes, I was creating it out of nowhere just off experience because it's a private university. Really didn't have to, had the standards weren't the same as a public university, so I created it. But here, what I like about this curriculum is, it's got 148 pages of stuff and standards, national and CTE. And so then you can also just take segment 14 or whatever about the food pyramid or shoutcasting and commentating and put that into your, public speaking class, or take this stuff about computer science about building a router and put it in there. So you can use it separately and take it all out, or teach it in 80 hours worth of stuff. So that's
Dr. Kathy Custer, right? She's the one who
Christy Custer.
Christy Custer. Sorry.
Yeah, Dr. Christy Custer's principal at Complete Maze High School. Mike Russell, he's the esport coach, and he's also math teacher, I believe, math or social studies. We went and visited them. Connor and I, Coach Olney, went and visited them a few months ago. And they've been teaching a class right now for Wichita State University of what is esports and esports clubs and esports whatever, but they are delaying it here for a little while. So those two levels, like organized play, start, get Nintendo Switches, just play. Like, we have a lot of schools that do that. We know a ton of those, just play. And usually those are the clubs that are the largest on campus too. And the large on campus, bigger than football teams, and with the least amount of funding or no funding at all.
And here's the funny thing too, is that, you talk about that experience. It's important to have those experiences because while everybody says, okay, how do I start esports? I don't think they realize, again, it's that rushed implementation. They haven't necessarily done the research. They haven't really looked deep into what this could be. Esports is organized, competitive. What you described to me by and large is organized, but more casual. Hey, we're going to bring in our switches and we're going to play a bunch of games. Hey, we have esports. No, you really don't. You're not focusing in on practice and training and regiment and things like that. But that's not to say those things aren't important, because as I tell people as well, if you have a casual gaming club, let's say some schools have gaming clubs, don't take your gaming club and turn it into your esports team. You can recruit from it, say, hey, we're going to formalize this and do this, these some games, but don't take away that casual game experience. Again, right. the importance of play in all of its different forms, especially as we're seeing right now, where there's kids who are stuck inside and now are gaming more and more. I did some research recently. I've been doing a lot of reading about, school shutdowns, for example, right? I'm a nerd like that. The 1918 flu epidemic, the polio outbreaks. Yeah. There were kids who were stuck in houses for months, not allowed to go outside, not allowed to play with their friends, during the summer months when there was no air conditioning. So think about that, these kids being stuck inside and having nothing to do. At least now we are able to honor the importance of play in all of its forms as we see just how important this could possibly be.
Wow. Yeah. To think about the struggle with no internet and no air conditioner for many of our generations today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, technology. I should say. Thank you, Steve Jobs or whoever, or
Al Gore.
Al Gore. Totally.
Remember, he invented the internet.
The lockbox. Put it in the lockbox. The tubes.
Well, I do want to take some time though, because this allows us to segue a little bit, because we're talking about kids who now are inside, that you are seeing these schools that are doing these things. Obviously, schools are shut down by and large for a good portion of the United States. But your group is also moving ahead with I love the name of it, the Social Distancing Cup tournament. So let's take some time and really dive into what is a Social Distancing Cup tournament? Who are you partnering with? Who's helping out with this? Obviously, you didn't just throw this together. Well, you kind of had to. I mean, it's only a couple of weeks, but looks like some great people who are involved with this as well.
Yeah, we're the nonprofit partner for this, partner with Generation Esports, and Generation Esports has been around for a while. It's just now kind of public. It's the platform that High School Esports League built over the past 7 years, and they're a partner with us as well. Really, it's their people, their tournament organizers, their IT professionals that have been for the past 7 years onboarding 2,500 schools, 80,000 participants over the past 7 years, and they've had a lot of people go through their platform. We talked about the organized, the casual, that competitive side is there with groups like HSCL and NAIA, and the competitive side is people need it right now. I think especially when this has really stemmed because the conversations have been moving towards this kind of open play structure for a long time with Generation Esports and High School Esports League. They've actually got partnerships with the military and Jewish community centers, YMCAs, other organizations where they're doing stuff outside of HSCL. So this brand for them, Generation Esports, is that everything else bucket, because they're also creating the middle school esports league that rolls out in the fall. Okay. And so they've got like really 1,000 people on the list, like schools that are ready to go with that. And the thing here is this open play structure has been around for a while, but they just rolled out their queuing system this last month. They've been working on for about 2 years, where instead of tournament structure, where I can definitely test this making a battle fight tournament over many, many times. And this is why I deterred people from just creating an esport tournament during this, isolation, because it takes a week's worth of prep and 5 hours worth of admin during the event just to manage all the people. So this queuing system they created, which is, I can get on Call of Duty right now and queue into a game. So this is nothing new. It's just tournament structure wise. It's a platform that's there. So you get on the platform and you queue in with High School Esports League right now, and you get a game because there's 100 people on and there's 50 games created. You're ready to go, rather than what we see in high school and college and middle school leagues is forfeitures, just tons of forfeits because, oh, my kids are out of town or they're playing basketball or whatever, and they didn't make it. I don't have my tank. And that happens a lot in a lot of leagues. A college league is trying to get scrims is rough. So when we talk about Generation Esports, what they've created at generationesports.com is a free open platform tournament that's a month long. You can play League of Legends, Teamfight Tactics, and Rocket League right now. They'll honestly probably add more. But it's $30,000 in prizes. Oh my gosh, being in this conversation to see what kind of prizes they're getting is cool. But the side on our side is it's free, but we would love to ask for support to give back during the response. So we have a COVID-19 response fund on our website where we are partnering with Feeding America. Soft Giving is our partner. We've been working with them for the gamers and eFuse for about 4 months now with scholarships. But the whole opportunity with Feeding America, as well as our partners, and this is something I think I really need to mention, is Human IT. They are an organization, nonprofit, that refurbishes computers and laptops and gets them to students. One-to-one device, but they also help them set up accounts and everything. It's not just like, here's a piece of equipment and they'll walk away. It's really big. So we're partnering with them to do one-to-one devices, especially during this time when so many kids are home and they don't have the access you're talking about.
Yeah.
And they also do like super low-cost internet, which is also another issue. Access and broadband is an issue we struggle. We work with those who are struggling in urban and rural all across the country because that is an issue. We work with Atlanta. They don't want to pay $20,000 a year for a different league to compete and get all these computers that they're not going to keep. So finding different opportunities through our partners like Main Gear to give those grants to those schools for that equipment that they need. That's what we want to do for urban or rural, because the suburb kids have it already, but the kids that we work with in inner cities, the internet's an issue just as much as rural is. But gosh, I'm really excited about Generation Esports rolling out this Friday, and it's like 20 different events a week. Asus like laptops are prizes and cash prizes, working with the Army. They've even got Gamer Sensei. If you lose a lot in any of the games, Gamer Sensei will give you like free coaching.
I need that. I'm terrible at pretty much every game. One real quick thing, just a question about the tournament, because this kind of goes back to even the Riot letter. I saw League of Legends as a game. Did Riot sanction this, or are we just, you know what, we're just going to say, go for it?
So the issue why a lot of leagues, a lot of organizations in the past 8 months haven't been doing League is because of their new structure. And the conversations that HSCL had with Riot in July last year was for HSCL's decided to step back, and they said,
"Yep,
we won't run it. We don't need to cause any problems. We know we have." I think they had like 5,000 participants playing in League last spring, not this spring, but last spring in League, and they were okay with that. I mean, that's a big game.
Yeah.
League of it was free games. So like right now you can get Rocket League pretty much free through PlayStation Network, and those are free games. And those are just ones that also aren't being offered in the spring season of HSCL. So it was kind of give that other opportunity. Rocket League is being played, but it's something that's available. For them, it was just that's the high demand games that are out and available. Rocket League is really high demand for people, but things like Rocket League, it's very much, I mean, which is fun. I love what they did with Generation Esports, because Generation Esports is all of us. It's 13 through 50-year-olds. I mean, that's the generation of esports, right? So I love the tie-in there that they created.
Well, let me ask you this too, and this is my hope too that comes out of all this. I mean, you did talk about rural and poor urban areas. Rural is kind of unique. I worked in a rural school district for a year, helping them roll out a one-to-one program, if you can imagine, using iPads. So every kid got an iPad. Funniest story I ever got was I had a kid who came to me and he said, I lost my case. I need to get another one. And, I'm just like, okay, whatever. Sounds nice. I go, well, where did you lose it? Did you lose it at home? Did you lose it here at school? He goes, I think I lost it in a field. And I went, you lost it in a field? What do you mean? He said, well, I got home and I jumped in the combiner and I put my case on the side of my chair, and I think it just fell out the combiner. I think I combined it into one of those big hay rolls. So I'm thinking like, okay, so you're meaning to tell me we're probably not going to find this? He goes, we have about 1,000 acres. He goes, I don't think you're going to find that case. But the other part I found too about living in those rural areas, and this is where I hope COVID kind of propels thinking forward.
Yeah.
While we seem to think we're this hyper-connected society, there's a huge swath of the country that is not connected. Some of these kids who need these opportunities the most in rural areas, internet access is parsed out in certain ways. Sometimes it's satellite service, which is highly expensive and it's metered, so you can only download so much a day. And then there's other services too that run where it's almost like it bounced cell tower to cell tower. And there's cell service as well. Some people run hotspots, but again, data being expensive. I'm hoping that what comes out of all this is that we start to look at internet service as a utility. Because when we start to look at it as a utility, that means everybody's expected to have it. Think of the old Tennessee Valley Authority dam projects that were trying to make, electrify the South during the 1920s and 30s. I'm hoping that we start to look at internet kind of in the same way, and we start to, because that will allow kids like we're talking about here who need this the most, these opportunities, having the opportunity to participate in tournaments like this and through foundations like yourself who are helping to find equipment and help get kids hooked up with equipment so that they can play these games at home.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're here. No, you didn't go anywhere.
I didn't hear most of the stuff you said. It was paused, but okay, I'll jump in.
Internet. Okay. Too long. Didn't read. Internet service should be a utility so that everybody can have access. And then you guys are helping out to get us computers for the kids.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, rural struggles with broadband access, and gosh, just think of how much better on a global stage that our students could do if everyone had access. Everyone had access to let's say digitally compete.
Yeah.
Right? If everyone had access to digitally compete and learn, I mean, we look at the ability to not be able to get access for any new information, especially if you can't even get it at the library at some places, or it's not available in rural cities or towns. Like, we're missing out on opportunities of students that have great potential, and I think it's definitely doable. I mean, it's just, is it lobbying or financial or whatever that's keeping it from there? I have no idea, but I mean, there's plenty of need for it on the rural space. And yeah, the one-to-one devices for the kids in the urban, I mean, gosh, we are missing a ton of potential for the kids that don't have the ability to code, don't have the ability to find some sort of research paper for their homework, because they can't do it at home and they've got to do limited access at school. And then I went to inner city schools, and most of the time in Oklahoma City, and most of the time we were focused on discipline problems, not learning. I was always in trouble, or whatever it was, but there's always a focus of just getting kids to school, and that's the struggle. And that's what I like about the curriculum that Dr. Christie and Mike Russell had created last year when they put it out. Was they surveyed and they got a ton of data, and students' GPA was going up by 1.7 and their attendance was going up by 10%. So like, nice. Not only are kids there now learning, the teachers are able to teach them because they're there. And to go back to really a big encompassing question about competitive play or gaming in schools or esport clubs, really, it's not designed for the kids who already have something else that you're doing. It's not designed for the football players that already have an activity, or people in band. It's not that. It's that subset of kids who have no belonging.
Right.
We know that 80% of the kids we ask who are in HSCL clubs, when we survey them, like, what other activities you do? None. Like, they're not doing anything else.
Right.
So these kids that are at home by themselves with low internet safety information, and the electronic babysitter is there, especially right now when they're playing 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
Especially that internet safety and that information that their parents may not be knowing that they're getting involved in, or golly, the partners we have like with Bark are they're just selling more and more app usage because there's so much more activity. But I just think those kids that are that subset of now they're playing on an esports team. Now they're playing. Let's take for you guys, for example, like racing. Like there's kids that weren't doing anything before. Now what we've seen is we survey them, and yeah, they haven't doing other activities, but they are eating healthier at home, and they're wanting to get their grades up because they want to suit out for the team, just like you would for football. I mean, when I had a D and playing football in high school, I wasn't able to play that week.
Sure.
And I had to get back up, right? So same thing here. But then the fun byproduct is seeing the students that are now eating dinner with their families rather than saying, "Mom, just a minute, I can't pause it. No, I'll take the trash. I can't pause it right now."
I hope that's more the case. Yeah.
It's what we're seeing. It's actually, and even the more fun part of like seeing football players in the stands at a pep rally and esport teams walking out of the tunnel. Like that's so cool. Like, what if not every kid had that experience when we were younger, because some of us weren't playing sports or doing activities. We're just in the stands or just under the stands or whatever, right? So this is shrinking that subset of kids.
And I know too, we have it go both ways. We've got some principals who have embraced esports. We've got some who haven't quite yet figured it out. I think compared to where the school district I'm in now was compared to 5 years ago when we started our first team here in Racine Unified, we had it actually easier in Rockford. Rockford, we had a fantastic athletic director, and buy-in was like, instantaneous. But with Racine, it's been more of a slow burn, I guess. But we're getting to that point now where I think we're going to start to see more of that tip where even there'll be pressure for principals to say, like, admins asking, like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you just honoring the kids that are putting out this effort and the adults in the room who are putting out this effort? Bubba, before we get out of here, I want to thank you first for giving an hour of your time, and we've been speaking for over an hour, minus a few hiccups here and there. I'll have to merge all that together on the video. But one last opportunity for you to promote what it is that you're working on, again, the Social Distancing Cup or anything else.
Yeah, you can go to generationesports.com, and they're rolling that out this Friday, April 10th for a month-long online ladder tournament with queuing system and a bunch of different opportunities. And it's really just it's a free event, but we'd love for you to donate to our COVID-19 response fund, where we will send dollars to Feeding America, Human IT, groups like Harvesters here. We also have a group here in Kansas City where we're both located. And we just want to support this opportunity. And there's going to be about 5,000 people participating. So you have an opportunity to play a lot of different people over that month. And really, the last thing I really want to leave is, esports, just like any other traditional sport or activity, is the ticket, not the destination. And the destination is that college readiness through esports, or that curriculum. The destination is the career and college readiness that you will be able to do, just like the graphs you show that NAIA has, or ones you've done where the center is esports and all these different. I mean, you take MBA career and everything that's around that it takes to put on this MBA and all the jobs. You just replace that with esports. It's there. So I get that question a lot, and I really want people to understand that esports is definitely just like any other activity or industry where there's a lot of opportunity, and there's millions of dollars of unused scholarships out there not even being used right now through our friends at NAIA and Collegiate Star League. There's a lot of groups that they need the pipeline. So help your students, meet them where they are. They're playing video games. We already know that. They want to play video games in school. Talk to IT director, talk to your principal. It's a bottom-up approach. You can partner with a lot of different organizations to support you. But we want to be here at Varsity Esports Foundation.org to provide any funding for your Title I or free reduced lunch school.
Bubba Gaeddert, thank you so much for being on the Academy of Esports podcast.
Thank you, James. Appreciate you, sir. Stay awesome.
That will do it for this week on the Academy of Esports. I've been your host, James O'Hagan. Esports are organized competitive video games allowing schools to redefine their athletic culture, diversify opportunities for student participation, promote good physical and mental health, increase collegiate scholarship pathways, and play games. We can never forget the importance of play. The mission of the Academy of Esports is to support these ideals. The vision of the Academy of Esports is for all students to experience the fun and joy of playing competitive video games. You may follow me on Twitter at Jim O'Hagan. That's at JIMOHAGAN, and through the Academy of Esports account at TAO Esports. It's a great way to get the latest blog posts, podcast episodes, and news coming out of esports and education. And remember, you can continue your engagement by going to www.taoesports.com. You can also connect through Facebook at www.facebook.com/TAO Esports. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to our time again next week.